hopefully.
Before you go live, Ashley, hi, I'm Michelle. I wanted to ask you a question. So you have a presentation you're going to be doing. At the end, do they have a way to contact you, like an email or anything, in case they have questions?
Let me just throw my email at the bottom. So for questions, you guys will be monitoring the chat, you said? So is there, so I won't be answering any questions.
Yes, so we'll ask the questions and then they'll be answered by you or by us if it's a specific manual question or something like that. So yeah, we'll ask the questions. We're moderating the situation behind the scenes. So
no, I was just thinking in the event that they have something later on, if I don't have the answer for, then I could possibly email you.
Yes,
just to ask.
I will put my email just at the bottom of the presentation so that if anyone wants it, they can have it.
Perfect.
Okay.
And it looks like we have gone live. So thank you guys. If you're already out there watching, we will get started right at 7 o'clock. So we have a few more minutes before we'll get started with the second session this evening. We are very excited to have a representative here from Chicago to represent and discuss that as selective admissions. So we will get started. If you have any questions, I am going to post the Google form in the chat or the comment section of the YouTube. And then we will be able to also answer questions directly from the comments. So if you would like to just comment directly on the YouTube screen, we can do that as well. So thank you for joining us, and we will get started here in about 5 minutes. If you guys are just joining us, thank you for joining us. We have about 2 more minutes and we'll get started. We are here to talk about the highly selective college admissions process. And we are so happy to have Ashley Sanders here with us from the University of Chicago to kind of walk us through this process. So thank you, Ashley, for joining us, and we'll get started here shortly. If you guys have any questions throughout the presentation, you can ask them through the Google form that's posted in the comment section of the YouTube, or you can use the Google form that's posted on the College Con information that you received through your Google Classroom, or that is in the chat. So you can post in the chat or through the Google form, totally your choice, how you would like to ask questions. So we'll get started here in about 1 minute. All right, welcome to the sixth session of our College Con 2021 on our virtual YouTube platform. So we're so excited to have you guys here with us this evening. We are going to get started on our session, Highly Selective College Admission. So I'm going to turn the stage over to Ashley Sanders. If you have any questions, you can ask them directly in the chat, or you can use the Google form, which is posted there in the chat/comment section of the YouTube, or in your Google Classroom. There's also a link to the form as well. So Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And good evening. Thank you for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Ashley Sanders. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at the University of Chicago. And today I'm here to talk to you about highly selective admissions, just kind of in general. So first, we'll discuss what it means for a school to be highly selective, and then we'll dig in a bit to how highly selective institutions review applications. We'll explore the holistic review process and look at all the different parts of an application and how those are used when reviewing. I'll also leave some time at the end to go over any questions that you may have. So what does it mean to be a highly selective school? Very simply, it means that we receive more applications than there are spots available in the class. In the case of highly selective schools, that often means that those schools receive far more applications than there are spots in the class. And admissions is selective and not just competitive. That means that there's not a certain cutoff where if you receive this score or this GPA, you're guaranteed admissions. That is true for some universities, but at highly selectives, that is not the case. Even if we only took students who had a certain score, a certain GPA, there would still be far more applications than we had spots to fill. Because of this, highly selective institutions are also often really looking for that fit piece. So academic, intellectual, personal, social fit really plays an important role in admissions, and sometimes demonstrated interest also plays a role. So demonstrated interest is where a school will track if you've been to their campus, if you've opened their emails. So it's a really good thing just to keep in mind. Schools will tell you if they track demonstrated interest, and so that's just something you want to keep on your radar, especially if you're looking at highly selective institutions. Because of all of these different pieces, highly selective schools often review applications holistically. So what is holistic review? Holistic review is a term that will be thrown around a lot in your college admissions process. What that means is that there's no one part of your application that weighs any more than any other part. So we're interested in your entire application and how those parts work together. Holistic review aims to be contextual. The contextual piece is really important for us because we have students applying from all over the world. And we know that one student's experience in, say, rural Kentucky will be really different than a student who's applying from Tokyo. Because of this, we will always be reading your application in the context of your school and your environment. Holistic review is also inherently subjective. That fit piece that we're going to continue to talk about and flesh out through this presentation is a bit of a nebulous concept that requires some subjectivity. And as I mentioned, we look at your entire application before making that decision. Numbers alone will not determine your decision. We're interested in that whole picture. So high testing does not guarantee admission, just as a weak grade does not guarantee denial. Every part of your application really plays a role here. Because holistic review is inherently subjective, more than one person is involved in the decision-making process. Typically, an application is read by multiple people before decisions are made by an admissions committee. The committee process is kind of my chance to put on my lawyer cap and make my case for my students. I present the evidence to my colleagues, and the decision is made by the group. This process really ensures that there's not one person who is the sole arbiter of fit. Instead, it's something that is agreed upon and understood by a whole institution. We go through a lot of training and we have these kinds of conversations with each other to make sure we're all really on the same page about what it means for a student to be a fit for our institution. So now you know kind of generally what holistic review is. We'll look at how that practice works in the review process. So as I've said, with the holistic review process, we're interested in every part of your application. The key parts here are academic preparation, standardized testing, and we'll talk about test optional as well, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, and then your essays. So the academic preparation is a place where contextual review really comes into play. We get a lot of this information from the school profile, and with every application, we are doing a contextual evaluation of the academic environment. So we want to know what kind of school you came from. Is it public or private, rural, suburban, urban, big or small? We also want to know what your curriculum was like. We want to know what opportunities were available to you and what you took advantage of. You would never be punished for not taking AP courses if your school didn't offer them, but we do want to see that you took advantage of what was available to you. We want to see that you took a rigorous course load and that you generally did pretty well. We're also looking at how you're doing within the school. What are your grade trends? If the school ranks, where do you fall compared to your classmates? If there are any anomalies on your transcript, like if you got a concussion before finals week or there was a death in the family and that shows up on your transcript in some way, there's a part on your application that's called additional information. This is the place to explain that to me. I really am trying to understand you and your full high school context. So if there's a piece missing, you want to explain it to me. So what I'm really thinking about when I look at that transcript is academic preparedness and likelihood of success. I want to know that you're ready for our courses and that you would take advantage of the opportunities we have available. The kind of preparation a school is looking for will vary from school to school. To use UChicago as an example, we have a really strong core curriculum that all of our students participate in. 1/3 of the classes that you take at UChicago are part of this core, and they're in a wide variety of disciplines. So when I'm looking for readiness and likelihood of success, I want to see some diverse coursework. I want to see that you enjoy taking a lot of different kinds of classes and that you're generally doing well in a wide variety of them. Other schools may look more specifically at your major interests. So if you want to be an engineer, they want to see that you've done really well in those math and science courses. This will really vary from school to school, but generally highly selectives are looking for some rigor and they're looking for that generally you did pretty well. Because highly selectives are also known for their rigorous course load, we want to see that you challenged yourself to ensure you're up for the challenge of the college courses that you would be taking at our institution. If you've taken any college level courses outside of the classroom, if you took any dual enrollment classes, summer programs, you also want to include those transcripts as a part of your application, because that's another place where we will look at academic preparation and readiness. Then we look at your letters of recommendation. So there are typically two kinds of letters of recommendation that are included with your application: the counselor letters and the teacher letters. So the counselor letter is typically used to provide more school context and give kind of an overview of you and your time in high school. They often will discuss your activities and achievement, may write about how you compare to the others in your school environment, and can also sometimes provide some really important contextual pieces that may be missing from that transcript. The teacher letter is someone who can speak to who you are in the classroom. So this is another important piece of that academic fit along with your transcript. For letters of recommendation, you generally want a letter from a teacher from a core academic subject. If you're not sure if it's a core academic subject, a pretty safe bet is if you're writing papers for it or you're doing problem sets for it. You want someone who knows you and who's going to say nice things about you. Do remember, teachers are taking time out of their very busy schedule to do something kind for you, so you should do two kind things in return. First, ask them early. Giving teachers enough time to write these letters shows that you respect their time. It also greatly increases the chances that they write you a positive recommendation. 2, write thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes. Kindness and appreciation are always remembered, and they're remembered fondly, and you want to be remembered fondly by people who are going to help you get into your dream school. So with these letters, I'm thinking about your academic fit. How are you going to fit into our classrooms? For example, at UChicago, we have small class sizes, and most of our courses are discussion-based instead of lecture-based. So I'm really excited when I see a teacher write about what a productive discussion member a student is, or a teacher who writes about intellectual curiosity or engagement and a genuine love of learning, because these are all things that we really consider a good fit for our institution. Then we look at testing if you choose to send it. So UChicago is test optional. That's a permanent policy for us. A lot of other institutions in this last year have gone test optional. I don't know who will keep that as a permanent policy, but it is something worth considering. But in general, there are kind of two main standardized tests, the ACT or the ACT, the ACT or the SAT. There are two. With these, some schools do super score. So that means if you take the test multiple times, they will take your best score from each of the subsections to get your overall score. So if you take it a few times, it is in your best interest to send all of those tests to that school for them to super score. Some schools will also take kind of subject tests. They're required for some, they're optional for others. That secondary testing also includes AP exams, IB exams, A-level scores, the subject tests if you choose to take them. With test optional, you do have the option of submitting this test like secondary testing. We do have students who will apply test optional, but will send in AP scores or IB exams. You can also apply test optional without any form of testing. So if you are not giving us any form of testing, that means we're relying more heavily on the transcript for the academic preparation piece, which tends to make sense for us as a pretty good indication of who you will be in the classroom is who you have been in the classroom. So for some students, standardized testing just doesn't best represent you as a student. So if you take that SAT or the ACT and you think, these scores aren't showing what I can do, you don't have to send them to a school that is test optional. If you're not sure if you should go test optional, I really recommend talking to your counselors because they can be really helpful in establishing how those scores are working with the rest of your application. After that, we look at your extracurriculars. This is really an everything goes section. So if you starred in the high school musical, or you swam on the junior varsity swim team, or you were the treasurer of your Spanish club, all of that goes in this section. If you had a part-time job, if you watched siblings after school, if you had an hour-long commute that prevented you from being a part of after-school activities, all of that goes in this section as well. Basically, we want to know you didn't go home, stare at a wall for 5 hours, go to bed, and do it all again. To be selective, we don't need to know how you spent every hour of every day the last 4 years. We're really looking for depth longevity, and impact. So think about, where was it that you made the most impact? Was that at work? Was that at school? Was that at home? Was that in your community? How can you show your depth of involvement? Did you get more involved as the years went on with that organization? This can also be shown through leadership roles, how you took on more responsibility as you got more involved with that group. We also are looking for that longevity. How long have you been involved in an organization? It's pretty different when we see students who have been involved in these activities all 4 years compared to a student who maybe joined 3 clubs the spring of their junior year. So in this place, we're really looking for fit. How are you going to engage with our college community? How you've engaged with previous communities can be a great indication of fit. Often, we're not looking for specific organizations that you've been a part of. Colleges have a lot of different opportunities for getting involved. I know at Chicago, we have over 400 student groups, so I'm not worried about you finding an activity you want to do. So I'm just looking for evidence that you've been engaged so that I'm pretty sure you'll be engaged in our community. Then we get to my favorite part, the essays. They don't tend to be your favorite part, but I love them because I just heard all of your stats. I heard everyone else tell me how amazing you are, and I finally get to hear from you. The first thing I read is your personal statement. We get a lot from the personal statement. One, it's a writing sample, so it demonstrates that you can write clearly and concisely, that you can choose a thoughtful prompt, an appropriate topic, and that you can be passionate about a subject and convey that passion through writing. We want to get a feel for your writing in part because you'll be doing a lot of writing in our courses, and we want to see that you're prepared for college level writing. The personal statement is exactly what it sounds like. It's about you. I like to say you can think about it like it's the first time we sat down for coffee. You can tell me one story, so I leave feeling like I know you a little bit better. It doesn't have to be the tale of incredible tragedy or triumph. You're 17. We don't expect you to have won a Nobel Prize or cured cancer. Really, we just want to get to know you. This is a place to really add some dimension to those numbers. So we learned about what you're involved in, but we don't know why or how. So we're looking for you to kind of flesh out those activities for us. What's important to you? Remember that the focus is on you. We get a lot of essays where I hear all about your amazing grandmother, and at the end of the essay, I really want to admit your grandmother. So make sure that this is something that really is about you. Highly selective schools also often have supplemental essays. A very common essay is the why do you want to attend this school? With this, you want to be really specific. So it needs to pass the whiteout test. So if I could white out every mention of that school and still know it's about that school, that's a good essay. If I could plug in the name of any other school, or if you leave in the name of any other school, not a great why essay. So be specific, but connect it back to you. This is a place where we're really looking for fit. So have you done your research on this university? Do you know what we have to offer? And how are you going to engage with what we have to offer? What are you most excited about for our institution? And why do you want to go to our college compared to the hundreds of other options that you have? So be specific, connect it back to you. The additional supplemental essay questions can vary quite widely. Some popular ones: write a letter to a future roommate, tell me about your favorite book, what's so odd about odd numbers. These essays are another place to establish fit and to learn more about you. Some of this is just telling us more about what you're passionate about, what you care about, what kind of community member might you be. Other essays are looking to gain more how you grapple with an abstract question. How does your brain work? So my best advice for any of these essays is be sure that you're answering the prompt. Even if it is a really strange prompt, Chicago is famous for our weird prompts, answer the prompt. Really think about what that question is asking you to do and do that. Some general essay tips: be mindful of your topic. If it would make your grandmother blush, don't send it to us. Also, be mindful of your tone. If you get in a fight with a friend or you have a bad day at school, that's not the day to write your college essay, because that anger comes through. And then I'm a little bit concerned about what kind of roommate you might be, what kind of classmate you might be. So write your essay when you're feeling really excited about college. Also be mindful of typos. A famous essay a student wrote about a beloved family tradition of hunting peasants. Microsoft Word will not catch that because peasant is a word, but it's a little concerning when he's talking about how much he loves shooting peasants with his dad on Christmas. So read through it, have somebody else read through it. I always recommend you print that essay out and have one trusted adult go through and make those edits on a physical piece of paper. It's really easy with Microsoft Word to just accept all changes, but you want to make sure you're maintaining the integrity of your voice. So have them make those edits on a piece of paper and then go through and make those changes yourself. Really throughout the entire application, what we're really trying to gather here is, would you be happy at our institution? And would you be successful both inside and outside of the classroom? Another thing that we can keep in mind is the decision rounds. So schools will have different decision round options. There's early decision 1. So this is a binding option as well as early decision 2. This is a contract that you, your parents, and your counselor will sign that says, if I get into this school, I will go to this school. It's a way of saying that school is my top choice. If I get in, I will absolutely, positively attend. If you think about the rounds in terms of a relationship, early decision is a proposal. If we say yes, it's us forever, or at least for 4 years. You do have to make this decision before you get your financial aid information. So if you're considering going early decision, I highly recommend you use the net price calculator. Every school is required to have one of these. You can just Google school name, net price calculator. It will give you a really good picture of what your financial aid package would look like from that school. Early decision is a great option for students who have that one top choice that if you got into that school, no other schools matter. Early action is a non-binding, sometimes restrictive. So keep an eye out. Different schools will have restricted early action. So you can only apply to one school early action. Some schools have restricted early action in which you can apply to as many schools as you want early action, but can't apply to any school's early decision. Some schools have unrestricted early actions. You can apply to one early decision school and as many early action schools as you want. So something to keep an eye out for when you are making those lists and deciding when to apply where. Early action is a good option for students who have a few top choices. You're really excited about it, but you're not quite ready to settle down. You want to see what your other options are before you commit. With early action, you apply early, but you don't have to commit until the May 1st deadline. Regular decision tends to be the largest round. There are no restrictions on regular decision. It tends to be later, often January 1st or 2nd. And this is kind of an anything goes round. You can apply to any school, regular decision. It's a good option for students who maybe just want to cast a really wide net and want to apply to a lot of schools, regular decision, or if you were applying to a few early action and wanted to just put a few more options there for that regular decision round. So we really sped through that. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about highly selective admissions in general.
All right, with that delay, we're going to give everybody just a few seconds to be able to ask questions. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of questions coming in. Our first question is, would you say it's better to early decision to a school you really like and make for a better choice later? So I think the question, it kind of got a little jumbled up there, is how should you determine if you should go early decision or just do regular decision for the school?
That's a really good question. I think early decision, a lot of students think that is the only way they'll get into a highly selective school and that they have to apply early decision. Early decision is, I think, a really good option if you know this is my top choice. When you think about receiving your college admissions letter, if you got this letter, you wouldn't even open the other ones. This is the place you want to attend. If you think, I feel that way about 3 or 4 schools, early action can be a really good option. You're still able to show that excitement through early action, that you applied early, you're excited about this school, but you're not quite ready to make that full commitment. And that is perfectly okay. We are not expecting that every student is ready to make that commitment of early decision in November. There are also, with early decision too, can be a great way where maybe you applied early action to a few schools. And then after you get some decisions, you think, now I know what my top choice is. Now I know where I want to be. Early decision 2 can be a great option. I know at U Chicago, if you are deferred out of early action, you can come back early decision 2. I'm not sure how that works at other institutions, but I do know that that can be a great way to show that commitment if you come to that decision a little bit later.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, now that we have this test optional opportunity for some institutions, when is it better to send test scores rather than go test optional and not send them? Do you have any feel for that at this point?
Yes, when you're thinking about if you should go test optional, I recommend a few things. So you want to think about how your test scores are working within your application. So if you're someone who does really well in the classroom, but maybe doesn't test as well, so you have a really strong transcript, but your testing is not as representative of that, that can be a good time to consider test optional. You also want to think about how your scores are comparing in terms of that school's pool. Most schools will publish their mid 50%, which can be helpful to see how your scores may fall in comparison to their other applicants. Often you will also be able to see a full range of scores that students who have been admitted had, but I find the mid 50% to be most helpful when you're thinking about, should you go test optional? I also recommend talking with your counselors because they have a pretty good idea of what scores are like, how that looks on your application, and they can be really helpful guides for, is this score going to be something that boosts you or that maybe you don't need to include?
Awesome, and some great advice. What application round do most schools tend to pick most of their students? So is there a given percentage of when each school takes the most of their freshman class?
So I think it varies from school to school. Generally, regular decision is the largest pool. So a lot of students will come from that pool. I would say often admit rates are higher in the earlier rounds. That varies greatly from school to school. With some schools, it's very slightly higher in earlier rounds. With other schools, it is much higher in those earlier rounds. It really will depend on the school, but those are also tend to be much smaller pools of students than that regular decision round.
Awesome. Looks like we have another question. What are some topics your personal essay could be about or should be about?
I think could be about is really endless. When I think about it, my favorite personal statements have really been those stories that a student is really passionate about. So when you think about what can you not stop talking about? What is something that you just want to share with every person you meet? If that is something that maybe you don't want to tell an adult stranger, then that can be a time to think more about your audience and pivot. But I think being really passionate about a topic is really fun for me as a person to read it. And I like getting to know more about what you care about, what you're excited about, what you've been up to. I would avoid, in terms of topics, things you think I want to read. So writing an essay because you think it's something that your admissions professional is looking for. We are not looking for anything specific. We really are looking for a chance to get to know you better.
Awesome. Don't see any other questions. We'll give everybody about 30 more seconds if something has popped in your mind or you would like to ask a quick question before we close out this final session for this evening. I remember we have additional sessions on Thursday night as well. Looks like we have another one. Does financial aid vary by school and or by those that are highly selective?
Financial aid will vary by school, and the types of financial aid will vary greatly from school to school. So if they are offering need-based aid, merit-based aid, if that need-based aid is grant-based or loan-based, so it really does vary from school to school. Some things to keep an eye out for on that financial aid page. They will be very specific about what they offer. So some schools will meet 100% of demonstrated need. So that means they will take all of the kind of financial aid application information that you give to calculate how much your family can afford to pay. They take the total cost of attendance minus how much your family can afford to pay to get your demonstrated need, and then we'll meet 100% of that. Other schools offer merit based on if you meet certain qualifications, you are guaranteed this much money. Sometimes I would say, especially at highly selectives, that merit-based is another kind of holistic review process.
And how does having a narrowed interest help in selective admissions process?
That's another thing that would vary from school to school. So if you have a really specific interest, especially if that school is known for that interest, it's definitely worth talking about in that kind of why institution essay as a reason that you're really excited about that school. I think especially like when I think of UChicago, we have some majors that they don't have other places. So if someone says, I really want to study Renaissance studies or Chicago studies, or the only place that I can do this exact thing is at UChicago, that is something that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for, because I think, okay, yes, maybe we are the best place for you to do that. I think having just being excited about a subject is always a positive, and you can present that in any way that you would like. But I think especially if it's particularly relevant to that school, showing that you've done the research on how you would study that particular interest at that school will be really important for those essays.
Great. And kind of going back to that personal essay question and the topic, do you think it's okay to write on a slightly controversial topic, like something in politics, or should it be a safer topic?
That's a good question. I think you should keep in mind that your audience is a stranger, so you don't know how people are going to feel. I will say I read an essay from a student who expressed an entirely different political understanding than I had, but it was a really well done essay and really thoughtful and approached these topics in a way that I was excited to see them engage with other students on our campus, and I ended up admitting that student. So if there's something you really want to talk about that is involved in something maybe a little controversial, just be aware of how you're talking about it. But I wouldn't shy away from something just because you are afraid that someone is going to judge you for it. That's really not what our job is, but we are thinking about how you present that.
Looks like the questions have slowed down just a little bit. I think we have been able to answer all the questions that have popped in over the course of the past 30 minutes or so. We got a couple of great sessions out there. So we really do appreciate from the students as well as the counseling staff at Manual High School, you coming in and providing us with this amazing information and just kind of the overview of what it means to be a highly selective college, as well as a little bit about the admission process behind the scenes. So that's always some great insight to have as they're working through their college applications in this process. We will have the question and answer document live. It will stay live throughout the rest of the week so that if anyone does come back and review these later, you'll be able to ask questions and we can get answers to those to you. We really do appreciate everyone attending this evening and spending time with us, helping guide you through the college admission process. So thank you so much, Ashley. At this time, I think we are going to close down the live. So thank everyone out there in YouTube land for coming and joining us. So I'm gonna, y'all have a good evening.